meeting is convening at 9:14, July 17th, 2023. This meeting is being held by MS Teams video conference and is being recorded. The recording will be posted to the internet for public viewing. The hearing licensing office asks the individuals attending through MS Teams keep your phone muted and cameras off during the entire meeting until you are given the opportunity to comment during the public and interested parties feedback period in the indicated on the agenda. Thank you. Excuse me. Please do not use chat features during the meeting. I will now call roll. Doug Welsh, I'm here. Lorraine Rodriguez. Lorraine. Tiffany Parrott. Chelsea Montgomery. I'm not getting anything here.
We can hear you. Lorraine, I'm not sure about. She was on a minute ago.
Chelsea's here.
Okay, Chelsea Montgomery.
She acknowledged.
Okay. David Levy.
David Levy here.
Levy. Okay, sorry, David.
That's right.
Vladimir, how do you pronounce your last name?
Vladimir Gutierrez. I'm here.
Okay, thank you. Members, when you wish to speak, please state your last name for the record. Board members are asked not to use chat features during the meeting. Public members attending in person wishing to speak must first sign in on the roster sheet available. For public members calling in on the public phone, line, on the public phone line or via MS Teams, please email April Fleming at april.fleming@oha.oregon.gov and provide your first and last name. Public and interested parties feedback may be heard during the public interest parties feedback period if indicated on the agenda. Everyone is asked to use appropriate language, manners, and protocol when conducting board business. This meeting is now called to order.
Good morning, Chair. This is Bob Bothwell with the Health Licensing Office. I'm going to take us back a few seconds. Lorraine, you called Lorraine. She did not acknowledge, but I see she's there. Lorraine, if you could take your phone off mute or your microphone off mute and acknowledge that you are here in attendance. So if she doesn't, we have the chair, Chelsea, Vladimir, and David. That should be good.
And we're okay, but we can't lose anybody.
Okay.
We have to stop.
Chair, members of the board, this is Bob Bothwell again. So we are at quorum without Lorraine acknowledging that she is actually online. So if anybody needs to leave, please let us know because we are right at quorum. Also, I need to make a public announcement that the public phone line is not working. However, the public can join by MS Teams, and the public that is listening, if you're aware of any other members that were planning to attend by public phone, can you please let them know that the only way to attend today will be by MS Teams? Okay, Chair, first item on your agenda would be approval of the agenda. And we'll need a motion for that.
This is David Levy, so moved.
And we'll need a second, please.
Montgomery, I second that motion.
Thank you. And Chair, if you could do a roll call. And you don't need to call the folks that are not in attendance, which is Tiffany Parrott. but you can continue to call Lorraine because I still see her there.
Okay, I will now call roll. Doug Welsh, yay. Tiffany Parrott is there.
No,
Chelsea
Lorraine.
Montgomery,
Montgomery's here.
David Levy,
Here, yes, agreed, so sorry.
Vladimir,
Yes, I'm here. A.
thank you.
And Lorraine, chair, please.
Yeah.
Okay, so that motion passed. Chair, you do not need to call Tiffany Parrott. She is not going to attend today.
Oh, okay, no problem.
All right. Next on the agenda is some introductions. Vladimir, would you like to introduce yourself to the board and everybody listening?
Yes, Vladimir Gutierrez, licensed hearing instrument specialist in the state of Oregon since 2003. Owner and founder of Mount Hood Hearing in Portland, Oregon. Very excited to be part of the board and contribute and take our profession to the next level and help in any way I can. Very excited to be here.
And we thank you. David Levy, if you want to introduce yourself, and then once you're done, we'll go around with the rest of the board and some key staff here in the room.
Great, thank you, Robert. My name is David Levy, and I'm a public member, and I'm a new member as well. I am currently in job transition right now. I work remotely in Salem, Oregon, and we're working starting next month on Medicaid policy for the state of Rhode Island. But I use a hearing aid, and so I found this would be a good opportunity to find out more about what's going on in the hearing aid community in Oregon. So I look forward to serving on the committee. So thank you.
Thank you. Chair, you want to introduce yourself, please?
Yes, my name's Doug Welsh. I have been in this industry for approximately 20 years and have been on the board with the Oregon Hearing Society for quite some time, and we're trying to rebuild that at this moment. I'm of course chair right now, and I'm a proctor, which I enjoy so much. I just love this industry actually, and I'm just looking for moving on with Vladimir and David. This sounds pretty good. A lot of experience with Vladimir.
Very good. Lorraine, are you able to come on?
Excuse me.
Okay. Chelsea, would you introduce yourself, please?
Of course, yes. I'm Chelsea Montgomery. I'm an audiologist currently practicing in Bend in Redmond. I've been in Oregon for the last 4 years, and before that was working in Tampa, Florida at the VA. So really excited for the new members. Thank you guys so much for joining.
Absolutely. Heather Fogelsong.
Good morning. My name is Heather. My last name is Vogelsong, and I'm an attorney with the Oregon Department of Justice, and I assist HLO and the various boards, programs, and councils that are under the HLO. Welcome to the new members.
And Chair and members of the board, my name is Robert Bothwell, but I go by Bob. I'm currently the interim director here at the Health Licensing Office. I've been here just about 12 years, been a state employee for about 30 years. And I'll echo everybody's sentiments. Thank you to the new members for coming on and joining us today. Okay, and it appears that Lorraine is having trouble unmuting her phone. Next, I would like to have Ann Thompson. She's your policy analyst. She says hi. Okay. Next on the agenda would be the director's report. And first up, if y'all are looking at your computer, I'm on slide 10. And in fiscal year 2023, in fiscal year 2023, in the last 4 quarters, we've issued 67 licenses. And in that same time frame, we have renewed 208 licenses, and the vast majority of those were online. And thank you everyone very much for doing it online. By age and gender, it looks like we have a nice spread of both male and female and across all age groups. And that was on slide 12. Licensing trends for permanent licenses, we are relatively static in the last 4 quarters. In fiscal year 2023, we've moved from 224 back up to down to 221, and then 220 and up to 225. Temporary licenses were holding in the mid-teens for the same time frame of fiscal year 2023. Trainee registrations in the fiscal year 2023, the last 4 quarters, we've run between 23 and 28. Any questions so far on those? Okay, moving on, the next slide is 16, and that is the pass-fail rates for the board. And of those, I am unable to tell you who's come back throughout this last year and tested and passed any of the tests that might have failed. So we have a good grouping of folks coming in to test. And this current year is the year at the bottom of that sheet. And the slide 17 is your financials. And the board began this fiscal year, which started July of 2022, and with $333,276, and the ending balance is $319,668. And for the new board members, down there's a little box at the bottom of that slide of slide 17. Since we're under the Oregon Health Authority, we have a shared assessment with them, which goes for some of our staffing and rent of this building. And so currently it looks like 3.6% is the shared assessment, and then the small board assessment is 2.635%. And that's because we have a small board assessment because we don't go out and do inspections for this board. Otherwise, there'd be another tab on here for inspections. And so that's why we're at 2.6%. And then examinations is 1.832%. That's for HLO to have the exams here in-house and for the laws and rules test.
Can we check for Lorraine? I think she's back
Oh,
up now.
okay. I've just been informed Lorraine may be on. Lorraine, are you here?
Hello? Yeah, can
Hi.
anyone hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear us?
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Awesome.
I'm sorry about that.
Not a problem. Welcome.
Thanks.
So are there any questions with regards to the director's report that I can answer? All right. Oh, Doug, did you have something?
You know, I kind of did. So this is Welsh, Doug Welsh.
Uh-huh.
What would be the difference in having inspections? Would that be something cumbersome for the state, or would that be something that we could swing at one point?
Well, we would have to develop a program for the inspections. And then there would be the cost to the board to possibly may have to hire a compliance specialist to do the inspections. So that could run into some money. It may or may not require an increase of fees. The HLO doesn't have any money. The money that we operate from comes from licensing fees from all the boards. It's with the umbrella programs. So HLO has currently 18 programs under us right now. And everybody, all the programs with the revenue that comes in from licensing and testing and application fees keeps everything rolling. So back to my point, it may be possible, but we would have to, again, develop a program which would be costly, which would cost, don't know if it'd be costly or not. And then we may have to bring on another staff or two to do the inspections.
Okay.
And if you would like, we can explore that.
I would like to have that explored, to tell you the truth.
Okay. So yeah, so we don't, another point is we don't license your facilities. So that could also be, that'd be one way for us to know where we would inspect. So that would be an additional cost also
Okay,
to obtain a facility license. Make sense?
it does.
Yeah. How do the other board members feel about that?
So this is Chelsea. I would just have some questions on what the, goal would be for the inspections.
We do, our inspections mainly consist of safety and sanitation.
Okay, that makes sense. That'd be something, I'd definitely be open to hearing about.
Okay.
I have a quick question, Gutierrez, Vladimir.
Yes.
So is there ever inspections as far as equipment calibration?
So we don't have a subject matter expert that typically is in the field for when we do our inspections. I'll clarify. We hire inspectors that are trained on the safety and sanitation. They may review records, but as far as equipment goes, that would probably be, a specialized thing.
Okay.
Lorraine or David?
Yeah, I said it was fine with me.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't have an opinion at this time. I'm just listening in, but thank you.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll put it on our to-do list and we'll bring a report back to you at the next board meeting if we have have a report available at that time. All right. If everybody's willing, we can go on to slide 19, which is the regulatory report, and the regulatory manager, Pursuant, is online.
Hello, everybody. My name is Pursuant. I'm the interim regulatory manager here at the Oregon Health License Office, and I'm here to kind of go over the regulatory report with you and answer any questions that I can. So when you're looking at this report, you can see that we have two bienniums that have cases that still have are still open. The 2021 biennium, there's just one kind of hanging on there, so out of the 24 that came in that last biennium, we still have one that's currently open. And then the 2023 biennium, we had in 21 complaints came in. 8 of them have been closed. 13 of them are still being investigated. So we have 14 cases that are still being investigated at the moment, or at least in various states of being investigated, either investigated or being reviewed by myself, or I think we have one that you all are going to review in executive session. So the other things on this report are just talking about what type of complaints they are, licensing concerns or service provided, and then how they came in by the complainants, kind of general sweeping terms, anonymous by the client or from other. So yeah, that's kind of the overall view of it. Did anybody have any questions about the regulatory report or any questions about related to this regulatory?
Yeah, this is David Levy. I'm just curious about complaints by type. You have the anonymous ones by client, and then what falls in the category of other?
I was looking at that number and I was seeing that was a little high myself. That looked a little high myself. That can be an advocate. That can be if the complaint came in from, like, let's say it was the husband who was getting the services and the wife actually turned in the complaint. That would be somebody other than the client actually turning in the complaint. It could be some type of an advocate. I know that we've had a few complaints that come in that are sent in from like a third party, or they might be referred to us from another board, like it maybe came in from the client to the audiology board. Turns out it's actually us, that kind of thing. Those all could be other. It's just generally somebody other than the actual client who received the services turned in the complaint.
Thank you.
All right.
Any other questions for Trampus? You're letting him off easy.
May I ask a question? This is Doug.
Sure.
Welsh. Sorry about this.
Yeah.
No
So
problem.
under when you receive, or say that I receive an audiogram from an audiologist, but the audiogram is not complete, are they held to the same standards as we are in the state of Oregon?
Audiologists?
Yes. I mean, when you complete a test and you have a sale of a hearing aid, does that test have to be complete?
There are some specific rules about whether or not when you actually have to when you have to do all of the tests yourself. If you have all of the tests that you're required to do that have been done within a certain amount of time, I believe that you can forego the testing. I don't see that very often when it's coming from a third party. Like if somebody comes in, like if you did a test with somebody and then 2 months later they decided to make a purchase, they may not be required to redo all the retests again. I'd have to look at the timeframes, but that's just an example. If they came from another hearing aid specialist or an audiologist, I think the same applies if you had all of the tests that you had to do. But audiologists do have a little bit different standards. I wouldn't say they're higher or lower necessarily. They're possibly different. They may, since we don't regulate them, I don't know if they have if it's a one-to-one comparison. So, I think that the hearing aid specialist is ultimately going to be responsible for making sure that they have all of the tests that they're required to have done to the standard that they feel is they're willing to put their name on it. So, does that answer your question, or?
Somewhat, yes. Yeah. Thank you.
If I may, Doug, yes. so HLO, we regulate hearing aid dispensers, but when it comes to audiologists, that's their board. They have their own regulatory and their own policies and laws and rules. And so it's really hard for us to comment whether or not they have to complete all tasks in the process.
That's what I thought. Yeah. Thank you.
So any other questions for Trampus? Anybody?
Excuse me.
Okay. So next on the list is policy. I'm going to scoot out of the way, and Ann Thompson's going to come on down.
Morning, everybody. For the record, my name is Ann Thompson. I'm the policy analyst for this particular board. We're going to talk about a couple of things today. During our legislative session that could best be described as chaotic, we had a couple of things come through that directly affected your board and quite a number of things that affect the office in general. The first bill that you're going to see is 558. Have you guys had a chance to review that at all? Well, I'm going to assume that because you're all A+ students that you did so. As the board discussed for a number of years leading up to the over-the-counter hearing aids, the new devices that were available per federal requirement as of October of last year. And when that over-the-counter federal mandate came through, we were all kind of wondering how that would fit with us. Well, somebody got a legislative concept through, sponsored by Senator Gelser-Bluen and Representative Nelson, specifically excluding over-the-counter hearing aid sales from the authority of the council and HLO. And as with so much other legislation, it looks very simple. Oh, thank goodness, now we know, right? We don't have to wonder how we're going to fit into this. But then we started really talking about it and picking it apart. And there's some things that we're going to have to figure out. And one is how much fitting, testing, advice can somebody who's selling over-the-counter hearing aids perform with a prospective client before they're stepping into the zone of hearing aid specialist? So we're kind of working with our partners at the DOJ to kind of figure that out. Usually something like this is very much assisted by an FAQ. The difficulty is if somebody is selling this and they're not a licensee, how do we even reach them? How do we even know who they are? Because they're just out there, right? We don't know what we don't know. So we were going to work on that. And another thing that came up within the office, because we have these little brainstorming sessions where we get together with regulatory and different folks, and we say, okay, what are some other things that we need to think about? One of the other issues that came up was, what if we have a licensee who also sells these products on aisle 3? And a person comes in and says, maybe I need a hearing aid, maybe I don't. What if the licensee says, well, go down aisle 3, pick something out? What obligation does that licensee have when handling these products, which are exempt from our authority? You see, so it looks very clear until you start picking it apart. And these are some things that we're working on at the office level to try to come up with education, FAQs. It's really not something that we're probably going to get into rules on, because rules we deal with may and must. May is you might do something, maybe you can do something. Must is you have to do something. And this exempts people who deal in these things from having to have a license. So with all of this kind of questions in the air, does the council have anything to add or any additional questions or things that we should be looking at with this bill, which took effect when it was signed on May 19th?
This is Chelsea Montgomery. I just throw in that seems reasonable for hearing insurance specialists not to be held to a higher standard, which I think is kind of where this is coming from. If other people can just buy these products at Best Buy, I think being able to buy them with little support should also be allowed for licensees.
I understand, Chelsea. The question, and maybe I didn't phrase it quite clearly enough, is if a licensee is selling a product that they can sell without a license, what are their what testing can they do? How does it fit? What are the obligations? If somebody doesn't like their product and they want to return it, do they have the same rescission rights? Working out the whole, is somebody held to unprofessional conduct if person comes in for help and they go, no, I'm not going to test you. I'm not going to do this thing here, pick something out, the whole mechanics of that, because it sounds simple in theory, but then when you start looking at the practice, what can an over-the-counter person do to help people choose might be one of these devices without getting into the realm of hearing aid specialist business? Does that make sense?
I definitely understand the first part. I was confused on the second. Are we saying what would someone who is selling it who's not a licensee doing as far as not, encroaching on the
Right.
Regulated space?
Exactly that. And also, what if we have somebody who is a licensee and they are bound by our rules and laws, and they sell a device, like they have an aisle or a display case and they have these items? How does this unregulated space being sold by a regulated person work out in practice? Trampus, do you have anything to add to this? Because I know you were, when we had our little conversation back in, prior to October, like how this would all work. You had some really interesting questions.
Yeah. So, these are clearly, unlicensed products. They're products that are meant to be selected and, kind of self-tested and run through by the consumer themselves. I think that, we have other boards that have these situations where they may be working in scope for part of their practice, and then they're doing something that's not regulated by us, whether it's unregulated or just not regulated by us. A good example is a advanced esthetician, for example, working in a place where there's a physician or something that is overseeing them for part of their practice. They're an independent practitioner when it comes to doing facials and doing laser hair removal and things that are within their scope. But then they sometimes step outside of that practice and move over into something else that's either unregulated or regulated by, the medical board, and they're doing it as a physician's assistant or under some other licensing type that they may or may not have. In those situations, what we don't want is we don't want the consumer to be confused as to who they're dealing with, what hat this person is wearing, and what type of rights they have of recourse if something goes wrong. So if a hearing aid specialist comes in, brings somebody in for testing, with the intent of selling them a regulated hearing aid, and then the consumer decides, well, maybe that's a little too much for me right now. I'd like to look at your over-the-counter hearing aids. What are the obligations of the practitioner for letting that person know that they are now stepping out of what is regulated by a licensing board and moving into a product that they have no protections under the law by that person. So the real issue here is going to be making sure that the consumer understands when you're taking off your hat as a hearing aid dealer and putting on your hat as a salesperson of an unregulated device. So that's kind of where that line starts to get a little fuzzy, and again, it may sound like, oh, everything makes sense, but I think with professional obligations that you all have as licensees are going to start graying over onto these other products, and we just want to make sure that the consumer is being protected, and and that the consumer is understanding when they're when you're changing roles. So that's kind of one of those type of issues. There are other issues that can come, that I can put out there. I don't think that the intent is to say, oh, you can't sell them. The intent is to make sure the consumer knows and is aware and is being protected in the way that's appropriate. Does that make sense?
It does, yes.
That was a fantastic explanation, Trampus. Thank you so much.
Hi, this is David Levy. I have a question.
Mhm.
Just to follow up on some of your earlier comments. So how are we going to let both consumers know what their rights are, as well as those who might want to sell these products, who, as you defined, aren't necessarily covered by the council currently? Are there some strategies to reach out to them? I mean, I guess I envision this, the example of people that sell their cars through a car dealership versus people that sell their cars through Facebook. I mean, going in, if you buy a car online from somebody, may not have some of the same regulatory requirements that you do if you buy your car through a car dealership. So I'm curious in terms of how we're going to let the public know in terms of FAQs or what they need to be aware of when buying these hearing aids.
This is Chelsea Montgomery. I want to jump in and say I feel like most of that information is going to be required to be in the box of these devices. They've got information on when you need to go to the doctor. They come with a required, I think 30-day return period. So I feel like if the consumer is going to switch and go into the unregulated space, that they are taking on kind of more of the onus of that with that being provided.
Thank you. So it would fall on the consumer then. Okay, yeah. Good to know.
And also, to Trampus's point, one of the big businesses that were going to sell this was going to be Best Buy, and they were talking about retrofitting their stores to have like specialized hearing centers, and they're going to have specially trained employees. But again, our questions were involved what happens when a licensee sells an unregulated product, and again, what their obligations to the consumer are, just as Trampus discussed. And this is something that we're still kind of testing out. We're still talking to each other about it. We're trying to figure out the best strategies. But again, ultimately, it is on the consumer. We're trying to figure out how our licensees fit into that space. So does that make sense, David?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions for our knower of many things, Trampus? No? Okay. So we're going to continue to work on that. The other bill that came to my attention early in the session is 3545. This particular bill did not go anywhere. It died in committee, but I thought that it was interesting enough to make you aware that this issue is out there, and somebody or an organization, an association, I don't know who sponsored it, got Representative Morgan on board. And essentially it was that the Health Licensing Office would have to adopt rules requiring a licensed person to inform prospective purchaser of hearing aids about specified hearing rules. And these were hearing aids that work with assisted listening systems that comply with the ADA standards for accessible design adopted by the Department of Justice. These are these building-wide systems, and this was sort of an information requirement that they would have to tell prospective purchasers about this feature function. And again, it didn't get any traction. But I bring this to your attention because, again, I guess this issue is out there. People are talking about it, and somebody was passionate enough about it to get a legislator on board. So while we don't have to do anything with this, this is just information for you guys to know it's out there. Didn't go anywhere this session, but as so often happens, if somebody is really onto something, it may come up again. It may show up, and we have some like the program we have for licensing of genetic counselors. They went to the legislature, the folks that wanted a license for that profession, 12 times, and they finally got it through in 2021. So it could show up again. Any questions on this particular dead bill? But here's the little fossil for you to look at. Nothing? Okay. We do have some other bills that affect the office, just for your information. We have a new board for sign language interpreters that was assigned to us. We have 2 changes to the Behavior Analysis Regulatory Board. We have a brand new program for the licensing of temporary staffing agencies. It just got off the ground 2 weeks ago, and we have a bill that's changing it again. So we're going to go back in on that one, and some other things, because the legislature just won't leave us alone. So with that, I guess we're going on to public interested parties feedback in case anybody has any more questions for the policy section. Going once, going twice. Okay, I'm going to hand it back over to Bob.
Okay, chair, members of the board, I would like to, before we go into public interested parties feedback, I'd like to reiterate for the public that our public phone is not working, and however, the public can join the meeting by MS Teams. And if any public members that are listening know of public members that wanted to attend, to please let them know that they may join by MS Teams. All right, Chair, do you have your script for public and interested parties feedback?
I do, sir.
Would you please read it? Thank you.
All right. At this time, the Advisory Council on Hearing Aids will hear public interested parties feedback. Members of the public, this meeting is being held by MS Teams video conference and is being recorded. The recording will be posted on the internet for public viewing. Please be sure to mute your microphones and unmute only when you have been recognized. Once recognized, please state your name and affiliation to the board for the record. That's all I have.
Okay, did any of them indicate? So public members that are on the call now, if anybody would like to make a comment, now's your opportunity. Okay, hearing none. Chair and members of the board, the next item on the agenda is an executive session. And so it gives a few minutes to get some,
Do we have to read in?
yes, the chair needs to read us in. Sorry about that.
Read this again. Okay.
For executive session.
Alrighty. The Advisory Council on Hearing Aids will now meet in executive session pursuant to ORS 192.6602 F, OR 192.355 and OR 40.225 for the purpose of considering information exempt from public disclosure at 9:58 on 7/12/2023. Representatives of the news media shall be allowed to attend the executive session. Pardon?
I need to interrupt you. The
Please.
date is July 17th.
July 17th. What'd I say? Sorry.
12th, I believe is what it was.
Oh, I did this. 7/17. Thank you. Okay. Representatives of the news and media shall be allowed to attend the executive session by conference call or MS Teams and will be provided further log-in instructions shortly. The public phone line and MS Teams will be muted for the duration of the executive sessions. Are there any representatives of the news media on the public phone line? Of course not.
No. And are there any members of the news media on MS Teams? Seeing none, please
Yep.
continue.
Okay, we are now in executive session. If necessary, provide instructions here. Okay, that's about it.
So,
That's all I have.
so recognizing there's no news media in attendance, the public phone and MS Teams will be muted for the duration of the executive session. We'll return to open session before taking any final action, making any final decisions.
Okay.
And this will take us approximately 45 minutes.
Probably
Yes.
more like 10 or 15.
Okay.
Awesome.
Trying to get a break in here. No, I'm joking. Okay, 10 or 15 minutes. So it gives it a couple seconds here to get recordings transferred over.